know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Rutgers had an excellent weekend. We can all be happy about it. Sorry for the little freeze up there on the video side. Some technical issues. Hopefully you caught me on the Night Report podcast, post-game live show with Mike Broadbent last night. That's why I didn't get out here to do a show on Night Watch. Welcome to our new subscribers. If you still haven't subscribed but you watch this channel, please click subscribe. It's right here. It takes a second. I'll wait. Just click that subscribe button. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers. We are really in a push. Great weekend for Rutgers sports. I was at the basketball game on Friday night. This was actually my first game of the year. There will be many more. I took the girlfriend. I had a great Friday. I went to Blackthorn in New Brunswick after the game. If you guys have not been to Blackthorn, by the way, awesome wings. Excellent wings. Check them out. Cool little spot. I really dig it. But, it was a late night, so didn't get on the mic then. And then yesterday was kind of hectic around the house, and then we had the game. So I figured, hey, let's just do one big weekend roundup and go from there. So let's start with football. I have to be honest here. I am thoroughly impressed with the way that this coaching staff, this team, this program as a whole has responded to the adversity that was taking shape in the middle of the season in October. Now, there's going to be a lot of, in our modern day internet sports culture, a lot of, calling out one way or the other, but I think if you're validly criticizing and being critical of things that you're noticing during times like October, as long as you're not going, overboard with hyperbole and whatnot, you can criticize things. And I think that this coaching staff and Coach Schiano in general, and probably the players, would tell you that they were self-critical, right, regarding that rough stretch of going 0-4. And that whatever, that self-criticism yielded is what enabled them to pivot and, tear it down to the studs, as Schiano said, about Joe Harris-Simiak and the defense, and build it back up and approach it in a way that is, gaining more traction and is much more successful. I am very impressed with the way that this team and this coaching staff was able to pick themselves up, reinvest in what they were doing, get critical enough and put the work in to make adjustments and come out as vigilant and as efficient as they have since the bye week. The defense, once again, so let's talk about this. Obviously, Rutgers beats Maryland 31-17. First time in several years. It's another monkey off this program's back. Billy Edwards, a pretty good player, not the same as Taulia Tagovailoa, but he still goes 32 of 55 for 335 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. So it wasn't like he had a pedestrian day. He also ran, 7 carries for 28 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry. I thought he made some good decisions on the ground, keeping the ball. But Rutgers, at the end of the day, when it counted most on defense, they were able to hunker down and get really key stops, and they were able to cause the turnover, which I think was another really important and pivotal part of the game. What we're seeing in the second half of the season, and I want to be honest here. So even when we won, I think beating Virginia Tech was the most indicative of a team that had the ability to play complementary football. But even in that game, towards the end of the game, some questionable coaching decisions I thought happened, and some, we had to make some plays at the end. Complementary plays, obviously, with the turnover in that game, with Longerbeam, and then the catch on the nice little screenplay to bail us out. And that was complimentary, but there were some issues there. But then, you look at the Washington game. Sure, we capitalize on a terrible mistake by the Huskies on a blocked field goal. Sure, we score in 3 key drives that is ultimately the difference in the game. But I still didn't think that we were entirely putting together a game, a full game effort from start to finish. And excuse the train horn here, I'm in Newark, New Jersey. From start to finish, that was really, evincive of what this team could do. And in the last 2 games, I think we really are finally seeing this football program put together from kickoff to final whistle, a full game and a complementary game encompassing both offense and defense in a way that gets us, a real leg up on the opponent. This isn't necessarily like a nail biter. This is a win where it's decisive towards the end, and the seconds are ticking away, and we're going to win the game, and we can be confident in that. And I think it speaks a lot to the growth of the team. Teams grow in season too, not just over time. So one more quick point on the big picture thing, and then I'll kind of get back to it again later. But this developmental situation, the pipeline that Greg kept talking about, there was a lot of valid criticism in the middle of the season about, where's this pipeline that we keep hearing about, because guys go down and all of a sudden these second string guys are not, ready to step up and step in. Now, some of that is, of course, attributable to the fact that many of the guys we lost were pivotal star players, impact players in a huge way, and you're never going to replace them. But you have to replace them to some extent, and we weren't able to do that. Well, if you look at the last few games, that pipeline is suddenly, coming to fruition whether you're talking about KJ Duff, whether you're talking about, Taj White hitting his stride a little bit more, whether you're talking about Jabome kind of settling in and being more of a player, whether you're talking about Kaj Sanders, and now you have Bo Mascow, with the great pass breakup in the end zone. I don't think necessarily that the pipeline has changed per se, nor do I think that criticism of the pipeline issue in the middle of the season wasn't valid. What I actually think is that the coaching staff has found a way now to better harness the skill sets and better harness the personnel they have in that pipeline, and found ways to make that pipeline work better for them in these last 2 games. And that means putting them in positions to succeed. And that means maybe changing your coaching philosophy in some ways to harness that talent that you have. For instance, I've noticed in the last 2 games, instead of turtling and going into a shell, instead of trying to play this exclusively ball control offense, Rutgers has opened things up through the air on offense. We saw a lot more 4 receiver sets. We're seeing a lot more downfield passing to not only Dymere Miller, who's really been unleashed the last 2 weeks, and this week, 8 receptions, 107 yards, 13 yards per average a catch, and a touchdown for Dymere Miller. And he had a few drops last week, but the first half he lit the world on fire too. This is a talented young man who can run routes well and who's speedy and shifty. And he got touches early in the season, but now you're really opening it up for him. And not only Miller, but the 2 young guys on the outside, and KJ Duff and Ian Strong. You're not afraid in these last 2 games to let Ethan Kaliakmanis get into a rhythm, let him air it out, and keep throwing the ball. And you're seeing the results. These 2 young guys are able to make catches. Acrobatic catches where if the ball's anywhere in their vicinity, even if there's a defender draped over them, they can come down with that football. That's old school perimeter wideouts, big body wideouts. We haven't really seen. They've fallen, I think, a little out of favor in the last 10 years, but there's still a viability to them. And I think in football in general, whenever you're doing something that not a lot of other people are doing, and you're starting to set the trend or return to an older trend, and you're ahead of the curve, you're going to cause problems for people because they're not used to seeing that. So these big body guys coming down with the football has been really effective. And it's not just throwing to the sticks, but by the way, we're throwing more beyond the sticks, just towards the sideline beyond the sticks, and these big guys are coming down with the ball instead of 3 yards short of the sticks. It's also downfield. These guys are catching balls, look at, downfield. And they're making great plays downfield, and part of that is the coaching staff opening things up and saying who's on the roster, what type of guys are on the roster, what's their skill set. Let's use their skill set the best we can. We don't necessarily have to stick to rigid philosophy. Let's just take a chance and roll the dice on what these guys are better at. And you're seeing it pay dividends right now. So Ian Strong, 7 receptions, 86 yards, 1 touchdown, averaging 12.3 a catch. KJ Duff had 3. Ben Black got in, had 1. And then you have, obviously, Kyle Monungai's back, and he had some tough yards. I thought that one of the things I was most impressed with, too, with the coaching staff, specifically Kirk Shiraka on offense, was we started off a little shaky. And I thought that this might be a shootout-type game. And it turned out that for, the good portion of the first half and going into the third quarter, it was a shootout. We needed to match back and forth exchange scores. And I thought we looked a little bit lost the first 2 drives. Ethan missed a couple throws. It looked like the offensive line wasn't getting any traction in the run game. The pass protection from the beginning I thought was suitable, was good. And Ethan had some time to throw the ball, but guys, weren't getting open or wasn't making the read or whatever. But instead of turtling and getting away from that and getting intimidated and just trying to rely exclusively on pounding the rock, Kirk Shiraka continued to let Ethan get into a groove, continued to let the receivers find the soft spots in the defense and beat guys, and we wound up breaking through. I thought the second drive before the half, or the second touchdown drive for Rutgers, the first one was a real slog, and we needed some 4th down conversions, some 3rd down conversions. We really needed some help to push through. The second one really seemed like, okay, we found the crease in this defense. We found the ability of how we're going to go about it and score, and we really didn't look back from there. And that's a testament to the coaching staff, specifically Kirk Shiraka, allowing his quarterback to keep throwing the ball and keep doing what works and get us there. The offensive line also found its groove as the game went on, I thought, and there were some holes, not consistently all the time late in the game, but enough to gain some yards to keep us in positive situations in the run game, get a key first down late. Kyle Monungai kind of wills himself to it. Kyle Monungai is an absolute beast. You just can't speak enough about it. The stiff arm at the end of the game that gets us a really key first down was great, setting the tone early in the game with the first down he ran, just carrying a guy 4 yards. Just a sight to see, and it makes the defense have to think twice whenever he totes the rock. But you have an offensive line shuffle because Needham is out for the season. The injuries just keep stacking up. Abram Wright's out for the season. Just brutal losses all over the field, week in and week out for this program. It's been really tough to deal with. But Needham is out, so Taj White shifts out to tackle, which is his natural position. Dante Chin steps in at guard. There were some scares there, too, where those guys go down a little bit, but they did come back. And I thought as the game... First of all, I thought the pass protection was impressive, quite frankly. And then as the game went on, the run blocking got better. But early on, the interior of the line, even in pass protection, I thought Zelinskis, our center, who has been pretty consistent since he became the starter, he struggled a little in that game, especially early on. Zelinskis was turned around on a key pressure. He had a penalty. There was some. He seemed like he was struggling a little bit, and that could be also indicative of the fact that you're not going in with the guys you started with in the guard positions, and now you're switching up another guard position, and he's responsible. He's got guys on both sides that he's got to kind of work with, and he's got to worry about other things. And I thought Zelinskis had a little bit of trouble, but he rebounded and did enough to win at the end there. But when you're shifting and shuffling an O-line like that, and you've been shifting and shuffling it since the Felter injury, it's not going to be easy. So it was interesting and encouraging to see the offensive line kind of gain their footing as the game went on and still be able to execute adequately in pass pro to be able to get us the plays down the field. Because let's face it, Maryland's secondary is not very good. And so we had to capitalize throwing the football against Maryland. I thought they had good penetration on the D-line early. I thought the linebacker play was exceptional early. They were closing angles. There was number 22, flying. When Kyle, I thought he was going to turn the corner for sure and wind up with 15, 20 yards. He just takes him down for a 4 or 5 yard gain. They were pumped up, Maryland. Don't underestimate the fact, and I said it on the post-game show yesterday, don't underestimate the fact that Maryland had their backs against the wall and needed this game to really set themselves up to make a bowl game run. And so they came out, I thought, pumped up, I thought with a lot of high energy, and we had to fend off a team that was playing a bit desperately. And that also is indicative of how good this team has been the last 2 weeks and how they're able to turn the corner and stay motivated and stay engaged. Like a lot of seniors on this team, they come back this year expecting to have their brothers to their left and their right, and Mo Toure and Wes Bailey and these guys. And those guys are gone for the year. And these guys, this is their last year regardless. So they're never going to play with the dudes who went down again. And they're still re-engaging and saying, no, I want to take steps this season. And I want to make it memorable. And I'll say this. Early in the year, I made predictions. I predicted a 9-win season. And other people predicted a 9-win season. And during the losing streak, I was rightfully critical of some of the things that were going on because I thought this team had more potential than a 4-game losing streak in October. Now, when you look at games like Wisconsin, maybe Wisconsin just showed up and was the much better team that day. You look at games like USC, I had predicted that as a loss. And you go all the way out to the West Coast after a couple tough losses, it's going to be hard to win. But games against Nebraska, where I did predict a loss preseason, but games where the defense holds Nebraska to 14 points, where Nebraska really isn't as good as advertised this year, where you have every opportunity to beat Nebraska. And then a UCLA team, which is very talented on the perimeter and took it to us in yards after the catch, but who isn't a very good team this year, who had to travel from the West Coast to the East Coast and had a brutal travel schedule before that. You had chances to win those games. And so I just want to point out that my prediction for the 9-win season and people's predictions were not some pie-in-the-sky fantasy. And it was being criticized a little bit during the losing streak that, you just set yourself up with expectations that are too high. That's why you're being overly critical. No, the expectations were not too high. This team had the ability to get to 9 wins. I think it's evident right now, sitting at 6 wins with 2 games to go. This team had the ability to do it. And it's unfortunate that some games we couldn't follow through in October because I think it would have been right there for the taking. Now, that's not disparaging anything this season nor to bring down anybody's spirits. That's just to say that expectations were where they should have been this year, and the team could still get there by and large, right? So we lock in a bowl game. That's great. Now we have a chance to go to a considerable step up in a bowl game, and we have a chance to continue to make progress with this program. And I'll say, look at the list of accomplishments that this program has succeeded in this year. And I think it does show a lot of growth. And whether that ends up being indicative in a step up in overall record or not, we'll see at the end of the year. But there's already a lot of things that this program has done this year that show it is growing steadily, slowly, but surely, right? We have the big primetime win, right? How many times in the last several years have we been set up for in-conference, primetime, night game production at SHI Stadium, home in Jersey, and we haven't been able to bring home the win? We hadn't had a conference victory in so long consistently at home in those situations. And this year we have Washington. We're 3-0. We get Washington at night. We put on an awesome night production. The stadium is absolutely packed. The tailgate scene is great. And it's on primetime TV. And we bring home a victory. Check. We have Minnesota come in, a winning conference team later or mid-season, later in the season, a winning team. And we beat them, a winning in-conference team later in the season. Check. We go on the road against a Maryland team who has owned us for a number of years, especially because of their playmakers on the perimeter and how good they are and how difficult it's been as a program to defend those types of attacks. And we beat them, and we beat them by a considerable margin. Check, right? So you're seeing incremental progress, and the bowl game is the icing on the cake because without the bowl game, those increments don't seem like they matter much. With the bowl game, they matter a lot more. Now you go out and get a couple more wins, it matters even more. So keep taking these steps, and remember, a lot of the guys on the team are young guys. Now, as far as holding playmakers to less productivity on the other team, Ty Felton, a star receiver for them who I was quite worried about going into the game, 6 receptions for 61 yards. He did have a touchdown, averaging 10.2 a catch. Some of the other guys, Wade, 7 receptions for 92 yards, 13 a catch. The guys ate because Billy Edwards' stats were pretty good, so they obviously did eat. Not as much so as we saw against Minnesota because you got to look at the talent disparity and the way they play the game, right? But still, These guys, linebackers, D-line, secondary, specifically linebackers and secondary, were finding the right angles and keeping things in front of them as best they could. Keeping guys in front. There were still a few big plays that got out of, away from us, but keeping guys in front of them and bringing them down before they had massive gains with the ball in their hands. Washington was getting massive gains on us with the ball in their hands, yards after catch. UCLA decimated us in that way. We, for 2 games in a row, have kept guys in front of us. Now, I'm curious because I don't have all the answers. I have to go rewatch the game. I'm curious about the end of the season when we can ask Joe Harris-Simiak the question, what specifically, when Greg says you tore it down to the studs, yes, we saw some personnel changes. What other things did you do to change up this defense? Because it's night and day. It's night and day from before the bye to after the bye in terms of keeping these teams in front of the defense and not allowing them to get too far downfield behind them. It made all the difference in the game. It gives Rutgers more of a sense of control of the game, and it gives more confidence in everybody. And the fact is, I thought if you look at the flow of this game, Maryland's scoring, Rutgers is scoring. At first, it looks like Maryland could score a little bit easier, but they were still struggling to move the ball at some points. Our defense looked formidable from the beginning. I think that's important to say. But Maryland still looked like they could get there and they could make the plays. Rutgers looking a little bit slow to start, and they finally break through. Then by the third quarter, it looked really evident that Rutgers was going to move the ball at will too, and Rutgers was going to get their points. And it was really going to come down to who makes the bigger stop at the most opportune time to stop this back and forth game that we have here. And it turned out to be Rutgers defense that did it. They stopped them. They force a punt. And not only do they force a punt, how many times have we forced a punt in a pivotal situation in the past? And then the offense has to punt anyway and you can't capitalize. This time we go down, we score, and then we get the turnover. I thought it was a brilliant play by Shaquan Loyal. And then Jordan Thompson comes down with the interception. Great to see. I thought Shaquan Loyal all over the field. And I have been high on this young man for a very long time because, he's a newer kid from West Side, and I always thought his dedication to the team and just his style of play since we saw him in the Gator Bowl kind of emerge and start just knocking guys down with his hitting ability. I've always liked him, but he's a consistent player. He's always there week in and week out. He makes some really good plays. He's always in the mix. And I thought he had just a great game yesterday. Shaquan Loyal goes up and causes that interception opportunity by jarring the ball loose, hitting the receiver as he's trying to complete the catch. It leads to a pivotal interception, which really, I think, we never really looked back from that point on. And it's crazy because with all the bodies going down, guys are going down this game, and I was just losing my mind with how many more guys we kept seeing on the field, like on the turf, getting checked out, and I'm saying, please, not another injury. We can't afford anymore. And Shaquan Loyal was at the peak of that. He looks like he gets hit in the head or the face or something in the first half. He's down. He kind of walks off gingerly, but then all of a sudden the second half, I see number 6, and I'm like, okay, he's back. And then he makes a play, and the announcers are talking about it. And then, again, he's running through. It looks like a blitz, running up through the middle of the line. He grabs his knee and goes down, and he's grabbing his knee, and he walks off gingerly, and I'm looking at him like, please don't be, putting your weight on one of the trainers. Please just walk off on your own. He walks off on his own, and then he's back in the game again. Loyal's back in the game again. So talk about a loyal son. Talk about a guy who's just always in the mix, who's just resilient as all hell and tough as nails. Look no further than Shaquan Loyal. I thought he had an excellent game. Bo Masco, the breakup in the end zone, I mentioned it before. Great game there. 5 tackles, 2 assisting with tackles. Jabome, again, I thought he missed a couple tackles, but he was still finding the right angles. Still got to execute a little bit better at times at the point of attack, but I thought he was solid again. Though maybe not as great as he was against Minnesota. That's a work in progress. That'll happen. Jay Patel, hats off to him, hits a 46-yarder, and it looked automatic. I've been saying for a while about Jay Patel, and again, this is one of my criticisms that I had. They were going for it on 4th downs where Patel could have probably pretty easily hit a field goal, not converting on the 4th downs early in the season, and then having Patel kick from 50-plus yards and setting him up for kind of failure in that way. And I know the staff wouldn't say they were setting up for failure because they believed in him and they had confidence he could hit from that far. But I just think it was a rough way to go about, your kicking game. And so now that we've seen him set up for more success and kicking more manageable balls, his confidence looks up. He looks like the guy we know he can be consistently. And I think it's made all the difference. And I think it's a great thing to have, a kicker like that. But hats off to Ethan Kaliakmanis too, just overall. Ethan was a guy who came in. There was a lot of discussion early, how much of an upgrade is Ethan Kaliakmanis going to be over Gavin Wimsatt? Wimsatt came in with so much fanfare, came in early, got his NIL, left high school year early, so much fanfare, a lot of athleticism in the running game. And Ethan comes in, he's Kirk Shiraka's guy from Minnesota, and his accuracy, people were debating it, and his running ability. I was one of the people how much of an upgrade is this going to be? And I think he has answered that beyond any semblance of a doubt at this point. It was a huge upgrade in the passing game, a huge upgrade. We don't win some of these games that we won this year without Ethan Kaliakmanis, especially the last two, especially this game. Ethan was, his ability to spread the ball around and hit excellent deep shots and excellent passes all over the field. And even the passes that weren't perfect, get them in a place where our bigger receivers could come down with the ball. His ability to do that was absolutely excellent and was evident. And without a player like that at quarterback, we simply don't get those wins. We're simply not the same team. And I think it's evident now that the way Shiraka and Shiano set out to get that quarterback upgrade has paid dividends because, as I did suspect, we had so many playmakers on offense that if you had a guy who could get the ball in their hands consistently, you're going to have a lot more success. And we're seeing that now, and it's great to see. So you got to take your hat off to Ethan Kaliakmanis and the way he's played and the way he's been able to. I mean, he just looks like a Power 5 Big Ten quarterback, and we've needed that for years. We've needed it for years. And we have it now, and all indications are we have him for another year. It's great for the development of these young guys, great for the development of the quarterbacks below him. And, you got to take your hats off to him. I'm looking forward to seeing more. At some point in this game, it turned from, oh boy, what's going to happen? Are we going to convert? What are we going to call? To, I can't wait to see what Ethan does next. And when he drops back, I can't wait to see where he puts the ball. And that's a turn of events as a Rutgers fan. And I think it's really important to note. Obviously, hats off to Kyle. Another great day rushing the rock. 25 carries, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Would have been nice to see him eclipse 100. But I think he moved into 5th rushing this year in the Big Ten. So another great year for him. I think a lot of these guys are going to get their crack at the league. And that's going to be fun. But we got more games to play this season. We are headed to a bowl game. That's going to be fun. And we have 2 more games this year. I'll be there next week. And it should be a great time to senior day in Piscataway, season finale at home. It's been a up and down season for me because of the health stuff, but we've had a really memorable season, I think, with a lot of these games. And it'll be nice to go to another game next week, and hopefully we can get the W. We'll talk more about that probably midweek. But all in all, I just thought it was it's really just great to beat Maryland that way and to get bowl eligible in that manner after struggling against them for so many years and after struggling in the middle of the season, to string together 2 wins and to win the way we did against Maryland and show the adeptness of what we can do on offense and defense, to show the resiliency of the coaching staff and the team is just it just bodes well overall. And you got to hand it to Greg. He looked defiant. He looked a bit, I don't know what the right word is because I don't want to make judgments on a man who's been so successful, but, he looked like maybe he wasn't sure what the answers were after the loss to UCLA and as we went through that tumultuous time mid-season. And he's resoundingly rebounded. And he said, call your shot now, and he has answered the bell. And when you say you're going to keep receipts and you turn up with them, you got to hand it to a guy who does that. And I just think it bodes well for the strength of the program, and it bodes well for the culture, and it bodes well for the resiliency of the coach and the coaching staff and what they can do. And it's great to win a game like that on a Saturday night and be bowl eligible again. After all we suffered through for several years before that. So it's not all roses. We're going to see what happens the last two games. We're going to dissect this season when it's over. But there's a lot to like, and there's a lot to be excited about right now, and you got to enjoy these victories when you get them, especially against a team like Maryland, who has kind of owned us for as long as they have. So now let's pivot. Let's pivot to basketball. So I was at the basketball game. First game of the season. Ace Bailey obviously makes his debut, and he's as advertised. We saw that in the exhibition game. But he's clearly as advertised. I mean, he can do things with the basketball that we just don't see around here. Rutgers wins 98-81. Almost broke 100, and I think it was maybe Hayes or Durkheck with the ball at the end there, and the crowd was cheering and trying to egg him on to break 100, and it would have been cool to do, but we scored 98 points. I mean, that's, for Rutgers, under Peichel, was a defensive powerhouse, 98 points, that's a lot. But the thing is, we needed to score 98 points because Monmouth was just kept coming, and they scored a lot. And I think one of the things we're going to have to discuss is the defense here and what goes on with the defense. Bashir for Monmouth, can I just say hats off to that young man, Bashir. I mean, that kid, and if you watch you should watch the post-game, the Monmouth post-game. The coach had a lot of really great things to say. Great guy, and people know who he is, and he's really got some insight and some really interesting things to say about this game, about the talent, about his guys, about Rutgers, about college basketball in New Jersey in general. Just an excellent press conference. And then Bashir himself in that presser, just listening to the kid. I mean, he's a humble kid, and he's saying, look, I might not have the same physical traits as some of these other guys, so I really have to find my shot, and I really have to, find ways to get my shot off. And the coach encourages me to get my shot off and to keep shooting, even if it seems a little crazy. They let me shoot. They want me to shoot, and he was brilliant, Bashir. 38 points, and just a brilliant game for him. 38 points out of 81. I mean, do the math. He was a huge reason why Monmouth was able to stay in that game and play the way they were. And I think when you're talking about defense on this team, I think it's a matter of gelling from a personnel standpoint and, figuring out where people should be. I think there were times and stretches where the defense looked really good, and there were times and stretches where it definitely had to be better, and that's becoming a trend this season so far. As I said, you're going to get everybody's best shot. Are you going to have a guy like Bashir going off for 38 points every game? Probably not, no matter who you're playing. But you still got to find ways to slow other teams down, because maybe you can score 98 points every week. I mean, every game. I don't know. I mean, the team's that talented. Maybe you can. But you don't want to have to, right? Especially when the identity of this team is, as a Pike team, is defense, rebounding, those types of things. You're going to have to. I think there's still a lot of flux in the lineups, and who we're going to play and when we're going to play them, and what strategy we're going to use to play against certain offenses, and that's playing into it. We'll find the lineups. We'll find the chemistry in that regard. But, as far as, fighting through screens and finding the right angles and knowing who to step up on, outside the arc and how to recover. I'm at the game, and I got to be honest, there was a lot of pretty good recovery and closing out, with our defense. I don't think there was anything in particular that made me pause and say, wow, this defense is going to be such a problem this year. I mean, there was good effort. There was good closeout. It's just that Bashir went off, and at times we weren't as consistent as we'd like to be. But the team, I want to say Lathan Somerville, for all the questions about him being young, and I understand it, for all the questions about what type of low presence he could be as a big man, him on the defensive end of the court, with his blocks that he's getting, and his rebounding. He had 7 rebounds this game. 7 rebounds. He's coming down with the ball, and he's getting blocks, and he's finding his way, in the post to body up and be a defender there. Is he totally there yet in the finished product? No. But I've been impressed so far with what Somerville's been able to do. Now, he's going to go up against some big men in conference especially that are going to be a lot more difficult for him to play at the caliber and level he's playing. But if he can continue to grow, the sky's the absolute limit for Lathan Somerville as a big man. Because, yes, he has other elements to his game and he could step out more. That just makes him even more of a well-rounded big man. I think this team may be his team after this year, assuming Ace and Dylan, move on. This might be the guy we're building around. And I think beyond just building around him the next few years, I think you really have to, I know it's the big two, I know it's Ace, I know it's Dylan, but you really have to start thinking about this as the big three freshmen. Because Lathan Somerville is an absolute force. And if he can continue to play defensively and on the boards like he is and continue to grow, there's going to be some hiccups when we get a step up in competition. But if he continues to grow and develop, which of course he will, he's a freshman. He lost all that weight in the offseason. He's really dedicated to his craft. He's going to be very good this year, not just in going forward. And with these other two guys, this is kind of a big three. And he was a highly rated, highly touted recruit too. So I think sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But let's talk about him. I mean, the guy is playing well. Some of the moves he makes, some of the things he does offensively, it goes without saying he's a force. And then if you combine the defense there and you add in these other two guys, I mean, he's a force. I think one of the biggest revelations about this season has been Lathan Somerville and his abilities on both sides of the court as they continue to keep getting polished. It's just awesome. Dylan Harper, to touch on the other two guys, 20 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Dylan Harper is a polished basketball player, man. I don't know if I've ever really seen a kid like that in person or really that I can remember. I mean, he looks physically like he's already at the level of everybody else in college basketball. And then when one thing I love about Dylan is when you need points or you need to slow it or you need to speed it up he can find the lane. He can calmly get the ball over the rim and in through the net. He can hit a shot if he needs to, but he can find open guys. I mean, he is a really steady star force on this team, and I just think the team's going to go as far as Dylan Harper could take us because he's a facilitator. He seems to be kind of the focal point of the team, and that steady presence is really just great to have. Ace Bailey, had 17 points kind of quietly, right? Like he hits the three, he has some gorgeous moves, like the turnaround jumper to just like athletically guys just don't do regularly, especially freshmen. But it was a quiet 17 points because I think a lot of other guys shine, and it was still 17 points. I mean, Ace Bailey, this is just going to be such a force, and I like the effort on the defensive side of the ball too. I like how they move the ball around. One thing I was obviously concerned about, these are young guys, these are really talented guys, and how are they going to adjust to Peichel's system, to such a widely talented team, to such a multifaceted team? How are they going to translate to that? Are they going to spread the ball around? Are they going to want to try to do one-on-ones a lot more? How's their defense going? No, these guys are playing team defense. These guys are passing the ball around on offense. These guys are trying to find the best shot. These guys are melding pretty well with the older guys that are around them, and it's excellent to see. And let's just talk about this. I have not seen a team at Rutgers this deep, probably ever. Any guy off the bench is a force. Any guy off the bench can score, legitimately shoot, legitimately score, legitimately rebound, legitimately give effort. Let's start with Jamichael Davis. 9 points, a rebound, 2 assists. He's in there making some really, really, really nice moves to the basket and some really nice shots. And this is a guy who sometimes you're like, is his shot selection great or not? He's doing some really good things, and it's great to see that, and that's Jamichael Davis. I think Zach Martini is now living up to the hype that we thought he could, especially seeing him against us last year. This young man can shoot the basketball. He's got maximum effort. He's a bigger guy. He's a forward, and he can come down with the rock on the boards, and he can D up. And we'll see how far that goes when you start with a step up in competition. But he could D up. But 18 points, He's sinking three-pointers. There was a one moment where he missed the three. They kick it right back out to him. He calmly squares up again and shoots it again, and it goes right in. I mean, a guy with that size and that ability from the perimeter, it's just going to be tough to cover all your bases if you're going up against Rutgers. PJ Hayes comes in, 11 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Just he's a force when he gets in the game. He plays with a lot of heart. He plays with a lot of effort, and he's another multifaceted kid. He gets hot down the stretch, and it's hard to match up when you have guys that good coming in constantly from the bench. Tyson Acuff, 5 points. I think you're starting to see Tyson kind of round into form. And as he continues to get healthier, like Pike said, I think you're going to see even more out of him. Agbole, the same kind of role. He starts, he does what he needs to do, but then Somerville really gets most of the minutes. And I think there might be a transition at some point to Somerville starting. We're going to see Jeremiah Williams doesn't get the start. Durkak starts. Jeremiah Williams doesn't play. It's because he's resting his shoulder. I think a lot of people expected that. And to see that we got 98 points and to see how productive our offense was, even without Williams, is just even more encouraging. I mean, our offense was as good as it was without Ace, and now it's as good as it was without Williams. Wait till they're full strength. And I think Williams being a veteran presence, a player who has been here last year, a multifaceted player on both ends of the court, I think is going to help this team in a lot of ways when he is in the lineup. And I think it's great that we were able to rest him to get him to 100%, because I think he's a steadying veteran presence that I think is going to be valuable to this team. And I don't know if you plug him back into the starting lineup in exchange for who, maybe Durkak, or if you keep him coming off the bench. My personal preference at this juncture is to keep him coming off the bench. Or it's not like keep him. He wasn't off the bench that he just didn't play. But I would have him come off the bench because I think Durkak, 6 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. Durkak is that player where, you need that defensive presence. You need the presence on the board. He can facilitate. Is he necessarily as dynamic an offensive scorer as some of the other guys? No. But does he bring an element to the team that you kind of need on the floor with all these dynamic scorers as far as defense, facilitation, rebounding, effort, those types of things? I think you do. I think you kind of see him in that, obviously a different set of skills, obviously, a different player and a different team, but kind of that Caleb role, I think you see with him. And I think you really do need that presence on the court, to round out the team, and that Caleb McConnell role, to round out the team and kind of have that presence there. I think you keep Durkak in the starting lineup, and there's a lot you can do, right? That's the beauty of a team so deep. You can change things up based on your opponent, and you can change things up based on game plan, and without losing much. You can make strategic decisions about what types of skill sets you want in there, what types of matchups you want in there, without really worrying that you're going to lose anything. So Rutgers basketball off to the start I think we wanted. Ranked, obviously, 3-0, right where we want them to be. You got to rack up those wins. You got to rack up those margins. You got to position yourself to be a tournament team and a good seeded tournament team towards the end of the year. Can't get ahead of yourselves. Things are going to get much harder, much faster, and we have a lack of experience on this team, obviously. A ton of talent. I wouldn't say we have let me rephrase that. I wouldn't say we have a lack of experience, right? We have a ton of veteran players who have been through a lot of things, who are very experienced and very talented, but the big headlining stars, those big three, and I'm going to start calling it the big three now until further notice, Somerville, Ace, and Dillon, they are inexperienced because they're freshmen. So you're going to hit some steps up in competition, some other veterans, and you're going to see how the team adjusts. But great start. Couldn't ask for a better start as of right now. We got Merrimack on Wednesday at Rutgers, and then Rutgers goes to Kennesaw State on Sunday, and then things really get real. You got Notre Dame, and you start going up against some of the big boys and seeing what we're made of out west. So it's going to be a really fun journey for the basketball team. I'd love to see some improvements on the defensive side of the ball. I think I'm curious to see what we start doing with the lineups as far as consistent lineups and who we're playing and whatnot. I will say this game in particular, I liked the effort on the boards. This was the effort. I thought I mentioned that we started to see it a little bit against St. Peter's in the second half where we saw this team rebounding effort. I thought the team rebounding effort was even better this game. I thought, and Richie said it, give props to Richie on the night report. He said, Ace is a big, tall guy. Ace got to get in there and participate in rebounding. And I thought Ace was participating in rebounding quite well this game. And I thought it made a big difference, too. I mean, he's a big guy, and he's going to have to get in there on the boards. And I thought he was not shy at all about getting in there and coming down with rebounds. He had 6 rebounds. And I thought that was great. But if you look at the rebounding statistics for the team, we had 27 defensive rebounds and 10 offensive. And that's to Monmouth having 14 apiece on either side of the court. So that's a big step up, especially those defensive rebounds from the last couple games. And I think it's indicative of what I could see in person, live and direct, was the team really emphasizing rebounding as a group effort. As Pike was saying, find a man, get your body on him, get your hands up, get to the ball. I thought we really did a great job of that team rebounding emphasis and philosophy. And Ace being in there coming down with some balls with his height and length was huge for that too. We've got to keep that up. There's going to be teams that it's harder to get that many rebounds and have that type of disparity. But if we can keep pace with them with team rebounding, because we don't necessarily have that ridiculously dominant number 5, I think that's a big key to the success of us this season. And I just want to emphasize that I saw that from start to finish really in this game. And it shows on the stat sheet and it shows with the eye test. And it's important to note because that's what Pike wants to see and that's what we want to see. So I'll be with you guys soon. We're going to talk about upcoming football game. We're going to touch base and review the basketball game. I hope you enjoyed Night Watch once again with the weekend review. And most of all, I hope you enjoyed your Rutgers weekend because it was a great one for RU fans. And make sure if you're on YouTube, you click subscribe right here. Please click subscribe. We got to get to 1,000 subscribers. It's important to me for certain reasons. Remember, we're still looking for sponsors. If sponsors are out there and anybody's interested, I'll work with you on something we can do. So reach out to me, shoot me a message, friend me on Facebook, shoot me an email, and let's talk some sponsorship deals. Also, if you're listening on YouTube, remember we are available on every major podcast carrier. Just search Night Watch Larry K and listen to the audio version. If you're listening to the audio version, stop by the YouTube, come check out me, my hat, my decor here, and click the subscribe button on YouTube because it is also available as a video podcast. Guys, I will talk to you all very soon. Enjoy your beautiful, crisp, sunny